Chapter 21: The Illogic of the Comfort Zone. If you've read even a handful of self-development books, you've probably read about the concept of your comfort zone. This, the idea goes, is the mental place you stay in to minimize any risk of feeling uncomfortable or scared. But it's also where you remain if you want to be mediocre or an underachiever. We are told that we need to step outside of our comfort zone in order to grow as an individual and be successful. When I first came across this idea, it seemed to make sense. And as I started doing things that looked scary to me, I grew in confidence. They weren't so bad after all. For example, many years ago, I was at a team building event where I faced a particular fear of mine: heights. It was the start of a week of activities that served as the culmination of my graduate program in a picturesque part of North England called the Lake District. I found myself at the top of a wooden telegraph pole, holding on tightly to a metal grip, 30 feet off the ground. While I had on a harness and helmet, I still didn't feel safe. I was the fourth person to go, and so far everyone else had managed to make it up the pole, stand on top, and jump forward, at which point the ropes and harness would support their weight. After what felt like a very long time, and encouraged by shouts of support from below, I pulled myself up on top of the pole, which seemed to be swaying more than it should. And with shaky legs, I jumped forward and was lowered to the ground by my colleagues. When I reached the ground, I felt ecstatic, and for the rest of the week, I had an extra bounce in my step. This and similar experiences made it seem like I had found the answer to confidence and self-belief. In fact, I got so hooked on the process of challenging my comfort zone that at one point I thought that if anything looked uncomfortable or scary, I had to go and do it in order to grow. Of course, I didn't do everything. Some things looked just too scary to do, such as bungee jumping or following in my brother's footsteps and taking up skydiving. But these elements of discomfort and fear were often the only criteria I used to determine whether or not I should engage in a given activity. However, it often took considerable effort every time I stepped out of my comfort zone. It was like I was fighting against myself in order to grow as a person, as a man. One thing that was never pointed out to me, however, was the logic of the comfort zone, or of my illogic in thinking that the only way to grow was to keep scaring myself into being a better human being. If you stay in your comfort zone, you don't need to feel uncomfortable. Is that true? No one wants to feel uncomfortable, unhappy, or in pain. So it makes sense that we would want to stay in our comfort zones if that guarantees we'll always feel comfortable. However, while that looked true for most of my life, I saw that there were times when I felt uncomfortable when I was not necessarily stepping out of my comfort zone, and other times when I would do something that I thought would be scary only to find it really fun. Consider this. If our feelings of comfort or discomfort are simply reflections of our thinking in a given moment, then it makes sense that we could feel uncomfortable doing something we've done many times before, something we have complete proficiency at, such as a pop star getting a few nervous feelings before going out on stage. On the other hand, I sometimes suggest to coaching clients to do the one thing straight after our coaching call that they are putting off in their life, the one thing that they know will take them in the direction of whatever goal or project outcome we are working on. Even if this is a small, simple step, it can often seem like it takes my client out of their self-declared comfort zone. They may feel scared, apprehensive, and a little anxious. But then I'll get a message from them telling me it was easy, or even that they found it exciting and couldn't believe they didn't do it earlier. In other words, often a step that seems threatening is no big deal. It would also make sense that we might not feel uncomfortable when doing something new. Our thinking might not tell us it's going to be scary, so we don't feel the fear. For example, for many people, learning to drive, the process can be a scary one. Their heads are filled with thoughts of making mistakes and crashing the car. But for people who have never entertained thoughts about getting into an accident, far from being uncomfortable and afraid when starting to drive, they are charged with excitement. What this means is that our comfort zone is simply made up. That is, we create our comfort zone from our own thinking rather than it being based in fact or reality. And if our comfort zone is made up, and anything and everything we do is separate from how we feel and think about a particular activity, then our logic of staying in a comfort zone no longer makes sense. It cannot guarantee a feeling of safety or comfort. Having realized this, does it mean I'm suddenly confident to try anything? No. Certain actions still appear scary, intimidating, or uncomfortable. But now I see those feelings as a reflection of the thinking I'm having, and the ideas they often evoke as simply mirages or illusions of my own creation. For example, if I get some anxious feelings before giving a talk to a new audience, I know that the feelings of anxiety are a reflection of my thinking in the moment. However, like a mirage, they look so real and seem to tell me that speaking to the audience is scary and or dangerous. This is just an illusion. So now, every time I take an action that makes me step outside of my so-called comfort zone, I realize I'm not expanding my comfort zone, but I'm instead showing myself that it is all a mirage, all built on my own thoughts. Like a man in a desert, I will see a mirage and get tricked by it, but when I walk towards it, it disappears, proving to myself it was all made up by me. This completely different understanding of the comfort zone helped me quit my job, talk to small and large groups, create videos on YouTube, start podcasts, and do all sorts of things that looked scary at first, including writing and publishing a book. It became easier to do these things knowing that whatever I was thinking about them was all made up anyway. What if the things you would love to do but are afraid to do were not really scary in and of themselves? Would that change things for you? What if you just created a scary mirage of what it might feel like to give a speech in public, ask out that girl, travel on your own, or apply for that job? Take a few moments to reflect on that. That's a good one to think about, isn't it? What if things you would love to do but are afraid to do were not really scary in and of themselves? That's interesting, isn't it? What if those things aren't scary at all? Not that they are scary and somehow we need to cope with those feelings or try and get through them or past them. But what if we could just simply see that the feeling isn't coming from the thing? It doesn't know anything about it. What then? Well, that makes anything possible, doesn't it? If you think about it, if we've been using the logic of not doing some things that we'd like to because they seem scary, if we realize that despite any temporary feelings, they can't be scary. Like the thing itself can't be scary. You can feel scared temporarily, but the thing itself can't be scary. Imagine seeing that. Imagine how powerful that is for you. Imagine what you might be able to do. Let's say you're a coach like I am, and there might be somebody you really want to work with, but you might think, oh, I can't approach them. That would be too scary to reach out to them and say, hey, I'm really interested in what you were doing. I wondered if you'd like to have a conversation. I'm a professional coach, and I think I might be able to help you and support you in what you're up to. Now, if you realize that there's nothing scary about that, it could temporarily feel scary, but there's nothing inherently scary about it. You could reach out to whoever. Anything becomes possible for you. Let me know what you find with that one. See you on the next chapter.